So what's your background with seacoal?
Seacoal, well, to be honest, that's all I've done in my lifetime. I left school and I went to, my uncles was in the seacoal and we just basically followed in from there, and I did that till I was, well, I'm saying, I think in 1986, which was a very rough job. It was all manual labour, and I become been invalid with arthritis through using the shovel over the years and years. As I say, there was my brother and my two uncles that did the practice. They did all their life, that's all they did. But there was quite a few just did it as a part-time basis. Pitmen used to do it for a bit of pocket money, and I would. As I say, it was a silly situation because the pitch used to tip it in the sea. Sea would sort it out. The contractor we would collect it with horse and carts, sell it to the contractor, and the contractor sold it back to the pitch. So that was a little bit. But the pitch actually still made profit selling it on to the power stations.
Alright.
So it was pretty complicated.
So was it, were you like doing it as extra, was it, or did someone run it, like a family, or?
Well, it was a big firm. I was contract with Thompson Brothers that are actually the millionaires. They own, Gordon Thompson actually owns, you know, Crestwall, Golden Sands Caravan Park.
Right.
He owns that. And they were at the farms, you know, big control. But they just started in a small way. They started, they didn't have it, but now they've got the load and showing the JCBs now. They just had to load their wagon with a shovel. Well, by handwork, but as time progressed, they got, you know, more advanced, able to buy machinery, and as I say, they ended up millionaires through the cycle. So there must have been a lot of money in somewhere. In fact, they used to supply also, they supplied Alcan, the power station with coal as well. Used to lead to Dunstan Power Station in Newcastle, Estella, which is basically put on, sell it to there, and yeah, it was a very big concern. In fact, there was I'm saying it was a bigger concern what the pitch was actually. There was 3 or 4 different contractors. There was Davy Moody, which is Heathline Commercials, the airport sequel, Harry Nichol of Gates, they were another contract. There was loads of different firms that had contracts at different power stations and things. But the horse aspect thing was, that was unbelievable because, you know, it's rough seas. You would back your horse and cart into the sea, and the waves would be coming over the top of the horse. And they would train just to stand. I've seen it being at the real old-fashioned winters, and the horses, what they call the feather on the legs, was our icicles and with ice in it, and just stood, trained. Where would you say anything like that? You would never see it.
So were the horses, they were trained for it then? And bought
well, what you're doing, you bought them, majority of middle-aged horses, because your horses was too scary and you just learned them, you know, schooled them on and schooled. They were learned to pull a cord, but some had not been on the beach before. Some wouldn't walk on the soft sand. You know, some was frightened of the sea, they would run away, or, you know, loads of different things. We had a horse, we bought it, it had killed a farmer's son. Was it terrible for biting and that? We had to put him up, we had a muzzle on it, you had to muzzle up so it couldn't bite you. And it still, you know, at times it still got you. And we kept it for a few years, but it got that dangerous we had to part with it. In fact, a funny story, I was at in a place 2 or 3 years ago, and I met the original traveller who had bred it. They just did Borrard Castle there. So now, quite a coincidence, but I have something here. I'm saying this is 40 years ago when I was just a little lad. And it's as I say, just meeting the same person who owned this. Well, we had all kinds of horses. In fact, on the moor here, there used to be maybe 30 horses on the moor because there wasn't any houses. There was cows running on the moor, which tell people now they don't believe it.
Because it's common land. So
yes, it is. It's actually where the freeholders actually own. I think they're only agents for the crown because it belongs to the crown. So basically, but it's got a lot of history. The moor, as I say, you can outrun horses loose. Now you can keep them on if they're tethered, which is basically more sensible. Because years ago they used to wander off the moor. You see them on the main street, see them up in Spittle, you know, all over the place. But, which is the traffic at the present day, you couldn't do anything like that.
Are your horses still working now?
No, I just keep one for, in fact my son looks after them, I just keep one for a pet now, Joe. It just, I've read full through it. To be honest, it's a funny story, because how the story originated, it'll be maybe 30 years ago. There was a young lad drowned at the sequel. Young lad called Robert Kent. And he actually used to come, I was travelling from Lywood, because we used to keep the stables at Lywood. They would come down here and in through Alcam. And he was in front of me, and instead of stopping, there was a rough sea, he decided to go back towards Cresswell, and he tried to cross the river and he got drowned. And we found him 2 or 3 hours, and he had tried to cross, his horse was drowned also, so he was Jehovah's Witness and they didn't believe in dying. So what happened was, he was cremated and had a wake for him and all this, and I bought a whole mare and fool on that day. And the horse that I've still got originated from there, and I've bred through and through, but it originally come from a funeral, which was a funny story to start. I bought the mare and fool, and I sold the mare. I kept the fool, then I started breeding with that. I bred 3 fools out of it. Then I sold it, I brought them in, trained them, messed down, and parted with them, and then I started bred another one. And the one I've got is a pet, but it's not, never been a sequel horse. It's bred from sequel. Basically any horse could be a sequel horse. You used to get different breeds. You had Dales and you had just half breeds, trotters, all different breeds. There wasn't any special breed, but it was just basically they used to come from the rag and bone man, you know, years and years ago. That's where they come from, because they were used for walkway and walk horses on the roads and that day. The one I had a special one. It was that dangerous. It took 2 people to look after it. It wouldn't stand anything. It was proper lunatic, and I had to look after it myself and use it by myself. So I had to change things around, which was to make it safe. And I had it 12 years. I had to live with it for 12 years, and it come through with arthritis. I now believe in letting anything suffer, and it ended up, went back to the slaughterhouse basically, because I wouldn't sell it to anybody else, because if you sell it sometimes they would get badly threatened.
So do you know if anyone does the sea calling anymore in this area?
That's one or two. There's one or two. It Plymouth does it. I think just a little bit casual. There's nobody does it as a make a living with them. No. In fact, you wouldn't be able to, because the pitch is not tipping. The cool it's washing up, it's just been lying for years, and the sea sorts it out. Depends what the prevailing wind is. It brings it onto the beach and that, because there will be that cool line in the rock pools, and you get a storm, it's all washed out and so on. That's how all this stuff what Jimmy Bonfather's getting on the East Sea Sand, that's where that's coming from. But once that dries up, they say that it's under sea seams, and that's not it. That's a fallacy. It's only stuff that's been tipped in the sea for years and years.
It's from the old colliery.
Old stuff. Well, they used to tip, there was 14 collieries tipping one time, so you're tapping with thousands of tons of waste tipped into the sea. In fact, the sea was the biggest dumping ground in the world. They talk about tipping rubbish. Even the present year, there's more rubbish tipped in the sea than what there is anything else. And they say we had good contamination in the sea. There's all chemicals and all kinds getting, but that's just part of life, isn't it?
The sea coal now it's a dying tradition, because there's nothing there to support it.
That's, you see, the coal fields is finished, so you basically haven't got any of that. That's where it originates from.
Even generations.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, with my own family, I haven't got any records of it. Where at the time you had video cameras and anybody thought you think would continue for life forever, but it's died out. And there isn't anything to show what actually happened. Other than that, it's footage, but not the same. Because I say that this film which I've seen Chris killed, there was the horse and carts, and that was on that. collecting sequel, and but that's it. Never. It was just I think it was just like a second rate thing. It was never intended to be, a major race, like. Well, it did reflect a little bit, but it was a poor reflection. The people who acting was the one Johnny when the one people what they were supposed to be. So it reflected badly on the people who was wanted the sequel. Because the sequel blokes have got a bad name to start with. You could never get anybody wanting the sequel could never get finance. Because there was quite a few must have been bad players and you couldn't. You all classed the same basically. But as I said, it was a lot of people made a good living. That's I don't know if you know Slaughters who live in. He used to do the sequel years ago, but he started a hen farm and he progressed into different things. A lot of people did different things, but Thompson's brothers is the ones who basically went away. I'm saying they're millionaires. He must be quite financially.
But they bought the beach, didn't they?
Well, they bought it off the national. They had the mineral rights. I don't think they actually bought the beach, but they had the mineral rights. It's the same as across here. The freeholders own the mineral rights on the EC sand, and they rented to Jimmy Bond. They rented off him, but I think the original owners is the Crown as well, or National Trust. But Thompson sold it back to the National Trust in Cresswell Beach in Line Sands. But as I say, it's just basically just an eyesore now. It was landscaped and just never materialised what it's supposed to be.
But I mean, the sea coalers, the people you collected and stuff, you weren't getting the rate. Thompson brothers were getting.
No. It was just it like say if he paid you say a pound a tonne or whatever he paid you, he would be getting 10. So that's where but as I say, he had, I think one time Thompson had maybe 20 wagons employed, which it's a good thing for the area, but to create employment. And then they went into farms. They had in fact they sold the farm to the Duke Northumberland, so actually he owns the farm to the present day at Felton, Moulsop and Long Horsey area. Maybe 10 farms. Which as I say, but a lot of people didn't like them. In fact, they're very badly liked where they live. But I found them alright. I was good with them alright. In fact, they were actually friends of mine as well, because they partly all grew up together. And when they started with the sequel, they just started on the bottom end and they progressed.
But there's still a few which go and collect. I think there's a few. There's still a few young'uns which go.
That's one or two against I think the one called the Bulghall in the Cresswell Beach.
Oh right, yeah.
That's the only ones. And the Smiths come across here and usually get that salad. I think the other day is just for the lockmans and different things. Right. There isn't any contract.
There's no trade in it.
No. It's just, I didn't think for it to be in the business now, you would have to have a good supply where you haven't got a supply. No, just dribs and drabs, so you couldn't take contracts for to supply anything. Bonfather School is kind of Scunthorpe and Doncaster, what's collected on the beach across here. It must be sold, he's like a coal factor sold back onto into power stations, and I think
that's why Alcom's come in as well, really.
That's
it. Quite big then.
Yeah, it's actually Alcom used to buy, I think Thompson brother put 1,000 tonne a week. Because in the power station you must have so much stone and rubbish to blend with the good coal to stop them from damaging the boilers and that. So basically they had that kind of. Thompson had the contract for Alcom and also maintaining all different kinds of work and that.
Was it quite hazardous as well, going out in the coal and with the horses?
Some terrible mornings. In fact, he used to put spikes in their feet in their shoes, what they call shards, so they could dig in the ice and that. Because you get a horse on the ice, you can't get back up. I had them on slip on the ice. He said, take your coat off and put your coat on so they could get up, because the panic like it, and the more the panic, the worse, so you have a right complicated to get them up. But even on the beach, you've seen them, like stupid people, put too much on their cards. And the horse would just collapse. And you have to tip it off, tip the card cool off, take the harness, get the horse up, and they were going back and do the same thing again. If they just put half a cartload, the horse wouldn't be a problem. But they were avoiding a sense, some of them, fill a great big same thing again. Well, the horse is like, it seems like journey can carry so, you know, it's too much weight and that, but some of them was just, there was a lot of very, well I'm saying a lot of people very cruel with horses, which my uncles was very strict. The horses was more important than what the people was. They had, when you brought them in, they had to be dried, they had to, you know, see that they were fed properly, which they're making a living for you. You had to look after them. They were your bread and butter. And what they used to say, never kill today what you've got to use tomorrow, which is, you know, it's a sensible thing. If you're making a living with a horse, and you've got to look after it because it's your bread and butter, isn't it?
Oh, that's amazing. So, did you say that was in your family? Kind of
Yeah. As I say, my uncles had mules walking in the, yes, had mules walking in the sequel. Then in fact I was at them days, I had all kinds different, but I'll get different horses, you know, I had small, big. Some horses used to bring them off the farms. They weren't any good in the sequel. Didn't like the soft sand, they wouldn't, just terrified, they wouldn't. Not every horse would do the sequel job. They had to be specific, trained, in school done for it to do that type of work.
Do you know how old the tradition is of kind of collecting?
Well, I'll tell you that the beaches was bought off before the war, and I think at the end of the war was 46. This is hearsay, mine from my brothers. They opened the beaches after that, and they were allowed to get back down and collect. Whether that was sequel lane, I couldn't imagine. Quite possibly that would be, but the beaches was all fenced off. In fact, I think that would be. I don't know if there was mines and that, and you know, but to stop anybody, because I had the blocks on the beaches like tagged to things to try and stop any would-be land, which would, I can't imagine about anybody invading the beaches, but the beaches was completely barred up really. As I say, I remember my grandfather and my uncles used to tell me, like that's, I don't know if the beaches would be barred for 2 or 3 years when the war was there. And then it would, after that, I think that's when the heyday of the coal really started, you know, with the power stations and different things. She likes to be missed, certainly.
Oh,
she loves to
the attention.
Funny little girl.
She is, she's great.
The final line, really temperament. The braid, actually braid, I've just read a book in the history of them. The braids, put the right, you know, the foxhounds. They travel with the foxhounds when the fox gets the ground. That's how they put down the hurdles for the terriers. That's how they've got I've got a big launcher, it's an because in this, it's tackled a big dog a million times. I don't know how the big dog would fight anything like it. I just keep fighting like anything that I just keep as a little pet.
Yeah. Brave little dog. So you got one horse at the moment?
Just the word at the top, just to keep her at the corner. As I say, she's never pulled sequel, just basically a pet. Hello.
Hello. Is it off?
It's not off yet, but it's okay. I think we've got one enough actually. Should have enough.
Horse and car to collect.
Yeah. And does builder still as well, is it?
Robert's finished. Robert's 16. He's still interested in horses, I think, but just as a hobby. Yeah, he's got 3 or 4 on the moor, but I don't think regarding collecting the sequel. In fact, he's retired anyway, so you know, he's wrong for it's the best. As I say, that's 1 or 2 lads at line with getting to collect swords, but I don't think. That would be hard to find, to be honest. And, yeah, to catch them, to fill them.
Was it hardy work for you as well? I go out early in the morning, or is it just catching the tide?
Yeah, but what you did, you depended on the prevailing wind. If the wind was southerly, you went to the well called the Burke and Trustfully, and if it was northerly, you went to the top of the moor called the Spirals. Or easterly, you could get anywhere because the sequel could aim them anywhere. So basically you just followed the tides and the sea, different winds and all. It was a thing which you had to base, you also had to watch because the sea is it's a very dangerous thing, the sea, what people didn't realise. if you could get washed away yourself, you know, even the, if you didn't, you'd be more careful that if you had which way the tide was coming in or the tide was going out, you know, you had to walk around all that. You had a lot of ways. It was basically a trade. It was basically a trade.
It burns slightly differently as well, doesn't it? The sea coal.
Well, to be honest, that was always blended. Years ago, you used to get it for the house fire. Well, everybody had house fire, but they used to fetch a lot of bits of parts that wasn't proper cool. When it got hot, you would fly out the fireplaces and they got burned people's coffins. But people bought it like a good thing when Newbiggin, when people just again. Didn't cost them anything, they could have gone on the beach and get themselves a few bags, but
Are you getting everything you want off them then, or is it tagged?
I think so, no, it's great.
Do you want a cup of tea?
Go on, aye. Thanks. You don't think people do it now?
I don't think the young people would. Why, you see, it wasn't a good job, but you are work for yourself. Why, it's a good thing being self-employed.
It is.
But it wasn't the conditions that you had to work under. That you know, it wasn't.
That's great.
You wouldn't have done it the present day. No, they wouldn't do it the present day. Plus, you used to wear shovels away, steel shovels. So if you're wearing that, you're wearing your actually shoulder joints, and everybody ended up cripple walk arthritis through the years and years. Those people come from all over the place to do it. Used to do it at Hartlepool, when they did the jeeps at Hartlepool. Used to do a little bit of camera sands and what was basically just jeeps there as well. But the jeeps was never as good as what the horse and cart was. You could get it where places with a horse and cart where jeeps that couldn't get, you see. Plus you couldn't, the likes of the horse was standing in the water, would stand for hours and hours, and as I was telling you with the seas, that kind of cross swimming. You would have to see it to believe it.
I would have too. It's still there.
What me?
Did you get a cuppa?
Yeah, I'm going to get mine in a second. I'm going to get mine in a minute, really.
Well, thanks very much for your time.
Not a problem, it's not a problem. It's actually a journey of pity that you hadn't been when it was in its heyday, because it would, for the history, actually it's part of the main history basically, because it was a knock-on effect from the pits in Aboriginal, from tipped in the sea, collected, and to publicise that it went back, sold back to the pit, would be unbelievable, would it? People wouldn't believe it. People tipped his ways, then bought back and actually made money. The pit made profit selling back to the power stations. They reckon Limehouse Colliery, it was the only thing that Limehouse Colliery made a profit from was the sea fuel. Because to produce the fuel from the pit was expensive, but they got it basically for nothing off the contract as compared with the price they were to produce it. But that was, I'm saying, that was peak. Some of it was 20, 30 years in the sea fuel. Years and years ago, it was, as I say, there was a caravan. Well, it wasn't a caravan site. At the top of the moor, there was 10 caravans. People just lived on there on the dunes, which, like the health and safety and the hygiene, it wouldn't be allowed there because there wasn't any water, there wasn't any toilet facilities or whatever. You had just basic. But as I say, they lived there. They lived there in the broad families. So there was even gypsies living on the moor. There was one old man lived in an old baker's cart. Lived there for about 30 years. So he would have a basic like an old bloke called Joe Provis. And then there was a gypsy family called the O'Neills lived where Ken Farm is there, beside the power station. They lived there for about 30 years and worked at the cycle. Even the daughters worked on the cycle. And like never hotel women working on the cycle, but they did. It was a queer old system. Mind you, my old grandmother used to tell you who your distant relatives, but the present day people just bother with things like that. It's a thing it's in the past now. Little Sheena.
And my partner said he did this, went on the carts now once or twice when he was younger. He kind of remembers that as well.
Yeah. As I said, there's quite a few, we have till a lot of young lads and that used to, in fact, a lot of school kids, in fact we used to do it with a lot of kids used to make a living with not a living, old motorbikes, can collect cycle motorbikes and that, you know, just to sell it around the doors and that.
Yeah. Did you get much for it, like a bag of coal? I mean, I suppose
it was all different things.
Yeah.
A lot of some people used to did it as a proper cool business. They'd supply the farms and we're surprised where it went. You know, how far cycle used to travel. In fact, when we were kids, we used to collect it and he used to go into Spalding in Lincolnshire. The boats used to fish for, they used to use mussels for bait. But the mussels come from Boston and Lincolnshire. And rather than bring these mussels here for the fishing boats, rather than back home empty, he used to take bags of seafood back with him. So he was, you know, rather than going back with an empty wagon. And we used to get our pocket money as laddies by collecting seafood till he'd come and selling to him, and would just be coppers, but was pocket money there, you know.
Quite hard work, pocket money there.
I used to collect for him for about a couple of weeks, and then when he come with the mussels, supplied the mussels for the fishermen, take it out of here, but as you say, it was hard work, but